Bah ha 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 ha! Herbert laughs out loud at the sight of the movie monster. Apparently the way that Zeddens see things is just different enough that they have a hard time seeing the obvious zipper on the monster costume in their horror movies. Sure, some horrible thing that could perfectly mimic its environment when it's not actively moving would be a scary slasher monster, but he can see the zipper in every scene. If it was any more obvious, it would have a neon sign pointing down at it. It's not funny, it's scary. The girl next to him protests. But the zipper, are you sure this isn't a B movie? He asks. A what? A movie made with such a low budget that any attempt at action or terror comes across as comedic. He explains before pointing at the screen. I mean, look at that. It's clearly a badly made costume. I can almost make out the person in the suit. What? Where? She asks, and he points. See? You can see the little handle flapping there as she's trying not to move for the scene. He says, pointing to the back of the creature in the middle of the tense scene where a couple of the heroes are trying to find the creature and missing it by inches. Okay, yay, but it's still scary. The dread one is classic horror. She protests and he shrugs. I suppose if those so-called dread ones were real, it might be, but otherwise I'm just gonna see this as funny. The zipper breaks my suspension of disbelief every time I see it. They are real, and no amount of disguising can mimic how they actually hide, she says, and his eyebrows go up. Really? What do they do? He asks, and she huffs. See this? She asks, running a hand up along the shiny, elongated part of her head. No eyes, but amazing axiom sensing. It's a basic discipline, a very easy thing to teach us how to sense light, using the axiom and see with it while also sensing axiom. But those things, they can change their axiom patterns mimicking whatever they're standing against automatically. So they're real ambush predators. Okay, I got it. So the monster is scary, but the movie can't do it justice. He muses before thinking. I'll need to do some digging, see how those things actually... He considers out loud, just as the monster in the movie catches the actor, and there's a blurring effect and it's chewing on an obvious mannequin with clearly fake guts badly disguised by low lighting. He snorts in amusement. What's so funny about that? She demands. I think that humans have better eyesight than Zedden. I can see all the flaws with the props, unless of course your internal organs actually do have price tags on them, he asks, pointing up at the screen. He gets the impression that she and more than half the crowd around him are squinting up at the screen at this point, and then the giggles start. Whatever tension there was breaks, and the girls around him start relaxing. Still, he feels like an idiot. Of course, they're using some kind of magic to see. They have no eyes, and they still dress and make use of things as a person with eyes would. No duh, they can see in different ways. So how much detail can you girls make out? Can you even see my freckles or the slight natural creases in my skin? What about the thin body hairs? He asks, holding up his arms. Can you make out the tendons just under the skin or the veins? He asks, and she takes his arm and examines it closely. Not at any distance. It has to be this close for me to see all that, she says, and he considers. Some inches to his couple of feet to make out that level of detail. An interesting thing to put in the report, but not critical. I guess that does explain the movie. I can spot all the mistakes and flaws much more easily. And why yours is so scary. No doubt you can see all sorts of little mistakes that make it less frightening. Oh no, the Aliens and Predator movies are well done. Not many mistakes to break immersion. I'm just very used to them as they're considered classics in action and horror, he remarks calmly. Then he's choking down his laughter as the one man in the movie gets horribly killed. Which is an odd point, really. The women of the galaxy are bloated to cartoonish proportions by axiom and their own diets, but what depictions of men there are often skinny and dainty-looking. Even odder is the fact that they almost look like humans in costume. It would take a bit of effort, especially with the arms, but he would be able to disguise himself as a Zedden man, although the axiom field would also be really, really tricky. It would be enough to do it over a recording, though, to fool a camera, and whoever's watching on the other side. Something else for his next report. Oh hey, a gearing up for battle montage. Classics never go out of style, Herbert says as he watches the actress visibly pour axiom into her tail blade and focuses it into her hands, before running them over her elongated skull. It leaves a crackling marking that Herbert considers. Usually it takes a massive amount of energy to make Axiom visible. It's likely a shorthand for her powering up. Then she does something that confuses him. She gets into contact with someone. A montage of her brooding in the darkness and linking all the locations of the attacks. Axiom still crackling across her when there's a knocking at the door. A predator? He asks. Yaoya! The girls around him correct in a scandalized tone. Yaoya then... Wait, did this turn into a... Holy hell, this might actually start getting good. He notes sitting up more to watch as the alien and predator go over the maps of where the camouflaged rock monster has attacked, and the predator points to a point near the center of it all. A scene transition later, and they're tearing a boulder off the entrance to an abandoned mine. There's conversation about it being an automatically mined-out seam via drones. A spear extends in the Yaoya woman's hand, and she begins stalking inwards before fading out of visibility. Ominous music begins playing as the hero of the movie starts prowling in 3 dimensions, crawling along the walls and ceiling to slip away and around and confuse the creature. There is a roar within the tunnels as the monster realizes it's not alone, and the sound of stone cracking and crunching. Whatever the thing actually is called, it's stupendously strong. Then it's over in seconds. The monster gets the jump on the hero, but a spear rams its way through it, courtesy of the Yaoya, giving the woman enough time to impale it clean through the head with her tail blade. There's a maudlin scene of it having a nest where a bomb is planted to both destroy them as they cinematically hatch and collapse the mine shaft to render the tunnels unusable as a lair for the creatures in the future. There are fond farewells and a scene of mourning for the hero before the last scene is of her preparing weapons and with books on anatomy for the monster. She's on the hunt. Well, that was something. It got good for about 10 minutes, but the rest was a B-movie comedy, Herbert remarks. Oh, come on, it was a good movie. The girl to his immediate right says, and he shrugs. It was entertaining, but there's going to be points where things just get lost in translation. He says before jumping a little, as a purrs grabs onto his ankle and begins to purr. Could you, he asks, holding up his leg, and she giggles before caressing the harmless creature he's feigning discomfort with and pulls it away. Thank you. He says, glad of their habit of remembering him as the guy who gives scritches and treats. It really makes him seem harmless and beneath any level of suspicion to be freaked out by the alien equivalent of clawless kittens. Not that the girls are very suspicious of him to begin with. They're teenagers, and most of them are none too bright either. But there are cameras that he's been spotting all over, and one of the first rules of a spy is that if you're not sure who's watching you, then you must assume they are, at the very least, competent and suspicious of you. If nothing else, the little act amused him at least, so he would probably pretend to be somewhat freaked out by the creatures until openly called out. Right, well, if the action comedy's over with, we still have 2 movies to... No! The entire crowd shouts at him. He'd given them the cliff notes for Predator 2 and Aliens, and no one wanted to see it but him. All right. Well, what's the next suggestion then? He asks, and that sparks a debate. Tell you what, I'll go refill the drink cooler. You girls decide what we're watching next. He offers as he stands up. Make sure there's plenty of Hyrie soda in it, one of them calls out to him. He offers a thumbs up and grabs oversized cooler and flicks on its anti-gravity. He then picks up the tether and guides it out of the room. Just glad carbonation is pretty much universal, though they seriously need to caffeinate things. He notes as he walks the thing into the nearest kitchen and opens a few different cases. He then brings out a few bottles that are covered in yellow hazard tape. Cola brewed on the Dauntless, as they won't let him at the stills, openly at any rate. He's got a solid stash underneath his closet and a few squat bottles behind a layer of fake books in a bookshelf. All of them either get well soon or wedding presents. He wasn't sure if they annoyed or amused him more, but hey, booze is booze. The benefit of being a teen is that it doesn't take much booze to get a good buzz going, but it's also way too easy to get a hangover. The cooler does exactly as advertised, and the small section he had indicated to be colder than the rest is full of his cola. They're now too cold and too visibly different to be mistaken for anything else. And I'm back. Also this bit here, my soda, it's got what would be a near-lethal dose of caffeine in it, so be careful. As you can see, caution yellow outside, different shape, as it's a bottle and it's much colder than the rest. So there shouldn't be any mistakes, okay, girls? He asks, coming in and indicating the interior of the cooler. Kay. Some of the nearest girls chime as they quickly grab their own soda. So what are we watching next? He asks, and there's a silence. What? We decided, one of the girls says before swallowing nervously. We're getting those horrible movies out of the way. We're getting them over and done with so we never have to see them again and they can't be held over our heads. Not to mention we remember the promise. No sex until you sit through all 4? Sure. I expected you all to get it done sooner as even I'm feeling the dry spell. He teases before taking a sip of his soda. So they're adjusting to him and trying to change things to their own advantage? Interesting. They've got more courage than he considered. Okay, just remember, we are seeing children in danger. Brutal gang murders and criminal madness in Predator 2 and Aliens shows. Again, child endangerment and an entire army of the xenomorphs along with a queen egg-laying variant that makes more monster purees, he explains, and he could swear some of them go pale. Yes, we're getting this done and over with. As much fun as living in a romantic comedy can be, it's got downsides. We're doing this.